In the golden years of the late 1950s, American Bandstand transformed high school students into household names. The show's weekly dance contests weren't casual diversions. They were national events that could turn shy teenagers into idols overnight. When the first jitterbug contest went nationwide in 1957, nearly 1 million handwritten ballots arrived, overwhelming the Philadelphia post office and proving that the country had fallen under Bandstand's spell. Every contest felt like a pageant of possibility. Couples stepped onto the dance floor with numbers pinned to their outfits, hearts racing as music poured from the speakers and fans prepared to cast their votes by mail. The prizes added to the spectacle: jukeboxes stuffed with records, gleaming convertibles, even a bubble-shaped Isetta that looked more like a toy than a car. For the winners, these moments became the stories of a lifetime. Today, we revisit 5 unforgettable couples whose contest victories defined Bandstand's golden years. And if you love these memories as much as we do, don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you never miss a story from America's dance floor. At number 5 is a couple whose story reminds us that perseverance often pays off in unexpected ways. In 1960, Barbara Levick and Billy Cook entered the Jitterbug contest, dancing to Hank Ballard's Finger Poppin' Time. The song's upbeat rhythm demanded sharp footwork and unrelenting energy, and Barbara and Billy delivered exactly that. Their routine was lively yet precise, and by the time the music ended, the studio audience was already convinced they had witnessed something special. When the nationwide votes were counted, the pair emerged as champions. Their prize was unusual, even by bandstand standards: not 1, but 3 brand-new television sets. In an era when most families felt lucky to own a single black-and-white TV, receiving 3 felt almost extravagant. The choice of prize was symbolic, too. Television was the very medium that carried Bandstand into millions of homes, and now Barbara and Billy were rewarded with the machines that represented that cultural shift. Fans couldn't help but smile at the irony. For Barbara, however, this victory meant something far deeper. Just 2 years earlier, in 1958, she had competed in a slow dance contest with Walt Grzelak and placed second. The winners that year were Pat Molittieri and, ironically, Billy Cook. To come back in 1960, this time with Billy as her partner, and to claim first place in front of a nationwide audience felt like redemption. It was proof that persistence could turn past disappointment into lasting triumph. Billy Cook, by then, was no stranger to contest victories. Known for entering multiple competitions, he seemed destined to leave his mark on bandstand history. But this particular win, with Barbara at his side, carried a unique resonance. It wasn't just another contest for him, it was the closing of a circle, a reminder that even familiar faces could create new stories on the bandstand floor. What audiences took away from Barbara and Billy's win was not just the thrill of jitterbug steps or the novelty of 3 television sets. It was the narrative of 2 teenagers who had worked, lost, returned, and finally succeeded. Their victory demonstrated that bandstand wasn't only about popularity, it was about resilience, the kind of determination that viewers at home could recognize in their own lives. Barbara Levick and Billy Cook may not have reached the legendary status of some of bandstand's other couples, but in 1960, they proved that every contest had the power to deliver a story worth remembering. Their jitterbug win remains a reminder of how bandstand gave ordinary kids extraordinary moments. At number 4, we return to 1958, when a quieter contest captured the hearts of bandstand fans. Unlike the high-energy jitterbug or the playful cha-cha, the slow dance required something else entirely: composure, grace, and the ability to hold the audience with stillness rather than speed. On that evening, Pat Molittieri and Billy Cook stepped onto the floor, and to the dreamy melody of Earl Grant's The End, they delivered a performance that felt like a moving portrait of teenage romance. Their chemistry was simple but powerful. Pat, barely in her mid-teens, carried herself with a confidence that belied her age. Her dark hair framed a face full of determination, while her movements were soft and fluid. Billy, already known to fans as a frequent contest entrant, matched her perfectly. Together they gave the slow dance a dignity that elevated it beyond a teenage pastime. When the votes were announced, Pat and Billy were declared the winners. Their prize was perhaps the most unusual in bandstand history: an in-ground swimming pool. For teenagers who were more likely to win jukeboxes, bicycles, or even quirky cars, the idea of a pool seemed almost surreal. It was the kind of prize that instantly sparked daydreams, summers spent swimming with friends, neighborhood parties, and the kind of luxury few families in 1958 could imagine. But beyond the prize, the contest marked a turning point for Pat Molittieri. She had already built a reputation as one of Bandstand's boldest and most independent dancers. Known for her quick wit and willingness to speak her mind, Pat stood out in a crowd of teenagers who often blended together. Winning the slow dance with Billy didn't just prove her ability as a partner, it cemented her presence as a personality viewers couldn't ignore. For Billy Cook, this was another victory in a long line of contests that seemed to define his bandstand career. His willingness to compete again and again showed both his competitive spirit and his natural ability to adapt to different partners and dance styles. Sadly, this moment would also stand as one of Pat's last major appearances on the show. The following year, she was asked to leave Bandstand after a conflict over writing articles for teen magazines, a reminder of how fragile fame could be. Yet for fans who watched her win in 1958, Pat's slow dance victory remains the memory that defines her legacy. It was a snapshot of youthful ambition, captured at its brightest point, before life moved her away from the spotlight. For those who saw it, the image of Pat Molittieri and Billy Cook swaying to "The End" is impossible to forget. It was not just a contest win, it was a moment of teenage beauty and grace, preserved forever in the golden years of Bandstand. By 1961, American Bandstand had already introduced viewers to jitterbugs, cha-chas, and slow dances. But every new decade brings its own rhythm, and the early 60s belonged to the pony. With its playful hops and bouncing steps, the pony felt casual, youthful, and just rebellious enough to excite a generation of teenagers eager to embrace change. On the day of the contest, Frannie Giordano and Mike Balara stepped forward to show the nation how it was done. The record was "Pony Train," a track that pulsed with a beat made for the dance. Frani, with her radiant smile and effortless style, seemed to glide through each movement while Mike gave the routine structure and control. Their chemistry was undeniable. He steadied the rhythm. She gave it sparkle. What impressed fans most was not the complexity of their steps, but the joy they projected. It was clear they were having as much fun dancing as everyone else was watching. When the contest results were tallied, their names rose to the top. Their prize left even the audience gasping, a brand new 1961 Ford Sunliner convertible. Sleek, chrome-trimmed, and complete with a retractable top, the car embodied freedom and status at a time when driving was a rite of passage. Incredibly, both Frannie and Mike received one, a rare double prize that made the victory even more spectacular. Few moments on Bandstand could rival the sight of two teenagers handed the keys to gleaming convertibles in front of a national audience. For Frannie Giordano, this win built upon her reputation as one of Bandstand's most admired dancers. Already known for her grace and warmth, she now had a victory that fans across the country could celebrate with her. Mike Balara, while less of a household name, earned his place in the Bandstand legacy through this win. His easy partnership with Frani gave their pony routine a sense of balance and polish that audiences remembered. The pony itself may not have lasted as long as the jitterbug or cha-cha, but Frannie and Mike's performance gave the dance its perfect moment on television. In a single contest, they captured the optimism of a new decade, the thrill of youth, and the possibility that dancing on Bandstand could change a life. Their victory remains one of the most memorable examples of how a contest wasn't just about who moved best. It was about who made America believe in the magic of being young. At number 2 is a couple whose very names still spark recognition among Bandstand fans, Sullivan and Kenny Rossi. In 1958, they entered the Cha-Cha contest, and what unfolded would become one of the most memorable victories in the program's history. Arlene, with her calm poise and confident smile, paired with Kenny, whose tall frame and smooth rhythm gave their routine both strength and style. The contest song was La Da Da by Billy and Lily, a bright, quick-tempo tune that seemed tailor-made for their partnership. On the floor, they looked effortless. Their steps were sharp, their spins precise, and above all, their connection was magnetic. To watch Arlene and Kenny dance was to believe they were more than just partners. It was to imagine a love story unfolding in rhythm. The studio audience erupted as soon as the music stopped, and when the nationwide votes poured in, the result was decisive. They were crowned champions of the Cha-Cha contest. The prize was as unusual as it was unforgettable: a BMW Isetta 300. Known as a bubble car, the Isetta was a tiny egg-shaped vehicle that seated two people and opened from the front. Seeing two glamorous teenagers standing next to this quirky machine created a moment that fans never forgot. Dick Clark himself laughed about the oddness of the prize, but it only added to the couple's charm. To this day, the photograph of Arlene and Kenny beside their Isetta remains one of Bandstand's most iconic images. Beyond the contest, what set this victory apart was the reaction it generated. Fan mail poured in at an astonishing rate, sometimes hundreds of letters a day. Arlene and Kenny became instant sweethearts of America. Teen magazines featured their photos, fan clubs formed, and the public speculated endlessly about whether their on-screen partnership was also a romance. Arlene would later clarify that she and Kenny were simply friends, but in the minds of viewers, they were the dream couple of Bandstand. Their Cha-Cha victory represented more than just technical skill. It symbolized the power of television to create narratives, to transform teenagers into cultural icons through a single dance. While many contestants came and went, Arlene and Kenny's triumph cemented them as enduring figures of the era. Even decades later, fans who grew up watching still recall the thrill of seeing them win. The Isetta may have been impractical, but the memory it carried was priceless. Arlene Sullivan and Kenny Rossi didn't just win a contest, they became the face of Bandstand's promise that two ordinary kids could capture the imagination of an entire nation simply by dancing together. At the very top of our list are the dancers who turned a television contest into a national event: Justine Carrelli and Bob Clayton. In 1957, American Bandstand had just begun its nationwide broadcast, and to mark the occasion, Dick Clark announced the first national jitterbug contest. Few could have predicted the tidal wave that followed. Close to 1 million handwritten ballots poured into the Philadelphia post office, clogging mailrooms and proving that Bandstand had become far more than an afternoon TV show. It was a cultural phenomenon. On the floor, Justine and Bob danced to Chuck Berry's rock and roll music. The record, with its pounding beat and bold guitar riffs, seemed designed for their energy. Justine's movements were sharp yet graceful, her style already hinting at star quality. Bob matched her beat for beat, giving their routine the power and drive that jitterbug demanded. Their chemistry was undeniable, and as the song ended, the audience knew they had witnessed a performance that would define the era. When Clark announced their win, the roar of the studio was matched only by the excitement across the country. Their prize was a jukebox loaded with 200 records, a perfect emblem of teenage America's obsession with music. For two high schoolers, it was more than a gift. It was a throne. They were the couple who had danced their way to the heart of a generation, and the jukebox symbolized their role as keepers of rock and roll's spirit. The significance of their victory stretched far beyond the prize. Justine and Bob instantly became national figures. Teen magazines clamored for their photos, fan clubs formed in their names, and viewers who had never set foot in Philadelphia felt personally connected to their triumph. For small-town teenagers, their win was proof that ordinary kids could step onto Bandstand and find fame. What makes their story unforgettable is not just that they won, but that they set the standard for everything that came after. Every contest, every couple would be measured against the magic of 1957. Justine Carrelli and Bob Clayton showed that bandstand contests were more than a diversion. They were cultural milestones, moments that gave America's youth a sense of identity and belonging. In many ways, their jitterbug victory was the birth of the bandstand legend. Justine and Bob weren't just winners, they were the faces of a new era. Their triumph remains the most iconic contest moment in bandstand history, a reminder of the power of music, dance, and youth to transform television into national memory. Looking back at these 5 victories, it's clear that bandstand's contests were never just about dancing. They were windows into the hopes of a generation, moments when ordinary teenagers stepped under the studio lights and, with the right song and the right partner, became symbols of American youth. Barbara Levick and Billy Cook found redemption through persistence, Pat Molittieri and Billy Cook captured grace in a slow dance, and Frannie Giordano and Mike Balara embodied the spirit of the pony craze. Arlene Sullivan and Kenny Rossi turned a quirky microcar into a timeless memory, while Justine Carrelli and Bob Clayton wrote history with 1 million votes and a jukebox prize that still resonates as the ultimate teenage dream. These contests told stories of resilience, friendship, ambition, and joy, the same qualities that defined the golden years of American Bandstand. They remind us that every spin, every step, every mailed-in ballot was part of something bigger, a nation learning to see itself in the energy of its youth. Which bandstand contest victory do you remember most? And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another journey back to America's dance floor.